welcome to another story from The Gathering and another story from me, Meryl. And this story occurred very recently, mid to late last year. I've had several friends. There were a group of us. We've known each other for in excess of 30 years. And of course we spent a lot of time together, and even our children went to school and all grew up together. As time moved on over the years, a couple of these friends moved away to different towns, and one of my closest friends received the sad news that her partner had been diagnosed with cancer, and I classed this man like a brother. We were so close. All of us were just a very, very close, tight-knit group. And sadly, at the age of 56, he was 54 when he was diagnosed with bladder cancer. So I would hop in my car and go and spend quite some time down helping Vicky with her partner, going to hospitals, appointments, anything I could do to help. Time passed and the cancer eventually got the better of Bob, and Vicky nursed him at home. He had a hospital bed set up in the main living area of their house. I had not long come back from visiting and helping Vicky, and I was due to go back again in a few more days, because we knew that Bob didn't have too much longer to go. He was bedbound. It was on a Sunday morning, early Sunday morning, that I was sitting on the lounge here in my home, and there was a knock at the door, and it was Bob. Now, Bob had been unable to drive for around 6 months due to the severity of his illness. He was unable to drive. I was shocked to see Bob standing at my door. He said, "I've come for my cup of coffee." Because whenever Bob came down to see his son-in-law and grandchildren who still lived here where I did, he always called in for a cup of coffee. Never failed. I used to always make that coffee, but this time Bob headed straight for the kitchen and he was making the coffee. And I stood there and I said to Bob, "You look so sick, Bob. You get on the couch, I'll make the coffee." So he came onto the couch and he laid down, and I remember going and getting a white quilt, and I put it over him and gave him a kiss on the forehead. I always gave Bob a kiss on the forehead. I was very concerned looking down at Bob at how sick he looked. But in the next instant, Bob and I were in a car and Bob was driving. I couldn't understand what was happening. We were going down an extremely steep hill, and right at the bottom of this hill was a set of lights. And I kept shouting to Bob, "Bob, you need to stop. You need to put the brakes on. The lights are turning red. If you don't put the brakes on now, the lights will turn red and we'll both be killed." But he kept staring straight ahead, just so intent on driving. As soon as we reached the bottom of this very steep hill and the lights were red, I came to and I was sitting on my couch. Now, I had not been asleep because I'd not long woken up for the day. I'd had the TV on. I just looked around the room. I was confused. I checked the kitchen, and the kettle that I'd used to finish Bob's coffee up was still warm. Now, this could be well and truly accounted because I had previously had coffee myself a couple of hours ago, but the electric jug should not have remained this warm after that amount of time. I went back into the lounge room and laying on my couch was the white quilt that I remember so clearly covering Bob up with. I knew something had to be wrong. It was around 5 a.m. I looked at the clock, and it was 5 a.m, just going towards 5:01 a.m. I was about to call Vicky to see if Bob was okay, and as I reached for my phone, it rang, and it was Vicky. She was silent after I said hello, and I knew. She said, "Bob's just passed away." Of course, I was extremely upset. We spoke for a while, and I said, "Do you know what the time was when Bob took his last breath?" She said, "I was standing beside his bed. I was holding his hand, and it was around 5 a.m. Bob was determined to take one last drive. He loved driving, absolutely loved it, and he knew that he had to come and visit me one last time for his cup of coffee. I'll never forget that. It is very recent. I think it was about September last year. And after a few hours passed, Vicky called me back again, and she went into more detail about what had happened. Vicky had a lounge chair right next to Bob's hospital bed that had been situated in the living room. She was extremely tired from looking after Bob, so rather than go to bed, she thought she would just sit in her lounge and watch a little bit of TV. Bob was asleep. When she sat in the lounge, she felt something poking in her back, like a continuous poke. She got up and thought maybe she'd left the remote control or something had dropped behind her. She checked everywhere and there was nothing there at all. So she sat back down in the chair, and as she put her head back against the headrest, she felt once again a continuous poking in the middle of her back. She had a realisation that something was wrong. She got up, went beside Bob's bed, took his hand, and he turned his head very slowly because he had been unable to speak for quite a few days. He turned and looked at her and told her, "I love you," with one tear rolling down his cheek. And that's when he took his last breath. And that is when Bob came to have his last cup of coffee with me. Bob was always the life of the party. He loved his music and he loved it loud, as did I. Many a time Bob and I would get up on the dance floor. Maybe our dance moves weren't the best, but we all always enjoyed them. He'd dance away, he loved to fish, he loved to party, and he loved his car. The only conclusion I could ever come up with in regards to the red traffic lights was the minute that the car reached those red traffic lights was the moment that Bob passed away.